This morning we are talking Kipo and the Age of the Wonderbeasts. This was a complete surprise to me, by the way. I had not heard about this show. I hadn't seen any of the previews or anything, but it was on Netflix. It released about 3-4 days ago, and I binged it all on Sunday. Every single episode. And it is a joy. I will be doing a 100% spoiler-free review, spoiling nothing that's not actually in this trailer video that was released. But it is a complete and utter joy. It's a kids show, but like with so many kids shows, it is just so watchable and so joyful, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. I have a basic measure of if a show is going to be amazing for me, or if a book is going to be amazing for me, or if something's really going to take me away. And that basic measure is really simple. Do I want to run a role-playing game in the world or the setting or the, like, whatever? And yes, I do. So strongly, to the point where I was like, who could I recruit? I could totally use the fate system for this. Okay, let's calm myself down. What makes this show so wonderful, and what is the premise of this show? Quite simply put, it is Fallout, written by an upbeat kids show with this just glamorous style. Is probably the easiest way I can describe it. So the Kipo, the character on the right there, she's been living underground with her family and a bunch of others in a burrow, not a vault, a burrow. And that's been about 200 years since the event. The event was some wild apocalypse mutation event. It sounds like it was a biological thing of something. They don't really go into it too much early on. And she emerges because a giant mutant destroyed her burrow, and she escaped. And that was like the setup to the show. And she runs into this is all in the first episode. She runs into Wolf, the character with the scorpion stinger and the wolf hoodie skin, and they start journeying together, and they meet other characters, and they sort of collect a crew together, and they go on adventures. Now, the interesting thing is, as I said, it's based on a comic. It's actually based on a webcomic that is readable online. Though I was having a lot of trouble reading it. I think the art server's been overloaded, and so I had to go to the Wayback Machine, and I had to sort of pick through that because I desperately want to read more of this. I want to see more of this because there's only 10 episodes. The thing that sets the sort of format of the original comic, but I think what makes the animation stand out so well is that in the original comic, it's basically a journey story where the characters are meeting new characters, are exploring more of the world. And so when the animators came together to write this, and the comic sounds, from what I've read of it and from interviews I've read of it, quite simplistic. Very good, like all of the inspirations and stuff are in there. But then what's happened is the animation and the writing team at DreamWorks has basically taken that skeleton and fleshed it out, and it really stands out. They've added a lot of elements, they've added a lot of complexity and layering that is only really possible to do once that kind of work has been written, and you can go back and you can sort of fill it out and flesh it out. So it's not so much a one-to-one of the comic, but it is an adaptation of the comic. And considering the artist who was doing the comic works at DreamWorks, it all works out. So it's very fabulous. But because that journey style in the comic, you have the timber cats, you have the astronomy wolves, you have disco bees and mod frogs and all these gorgeous, wonderful characters. And the comic is drawn very similar to the style of this animated show, and it's from Studio Mirror, which, if you know them, are just fucking top-notch animators. and the key art is all hand-drawn and then scanned in. Yes, they're using digital processes, but there's a lot of hand-drawn animation that goes into the show, and it really stands out, especially in the combat. I mean, you just see that water there. It's not computer water. They've used some computer stuff to help it along, but that is very much a hand-drawn feel and effect. So the mega bunnies and I forget what the snakes are called, but yeah. It's just this fantastic world and the music. Clearly the creator has a thing for music, because I don't know if it's the original webcomic artist who has the thing for music or just someone on the core creative team. But the music plays like a core element of the story, but also just the theming, and there's a lot of love that goes into the music. All in all, I would really strongly, unequivocally recommend Kipo to anyone who is a fan of animation and anyone who is a fan of these sort of fantastical shows. It is, interestingly enough, one of the first Morning Monster shows we did, we were talking about Daybreak, which was another post-apocalyptic comic that got adapted. And it's part of this trend which we identified back then of post-apocalyptic kids shows that are upbeat. It's a very interesting genre, and I've done more thinking on it since watching through Kipo and going just with things that have gone through. And I think so much of it is because so much of the media is post-apocalyptic now, as in like it's if you're a kid, you're hearing a lot about climate change and how the world's going to end and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that in the mindscape of the news and all of that stuff. But then, of course, it's nice to see upbeat shows about that kind of stuff, like, oh, it's all going to be destroyed. And these shows put a heavy emphasis on kid play with minimizing the adults, or if there are adults, they're evil, or there's a handful of maybe good adults, or they're compromised in some way. So that is very much sort of the beating heart of the genre. And I do think we can call it a genre at this point. There's been enough shows and comics and stuff that's come up. It is sort of a subgenre of the post-apocalyptic. It's, as I say, the key elements I think you need if you're interested in this. And I really kind of want to run an upbeat post-apocalyptic game now, because I feel like it is so rich. Is you want a core cast of young characters, or optimistic characters. I mean, like, Wolf isn't fully optimistic, but she still is, she is the realist of the group, but even she is adapted and comfortable in this post-apocalyptic life. They're not like going, oh, life was so much better before the apocalypse kind of thing. They're like fully enjoying the apocalypse. You need to keep the tone very comedic. You can do serious story beats, but the serious story beats are about interpersonal relationship stuff, or they're about typical high school drama stuff. They're not serious story beats about, oh my god, the apocalypse. The apocalypse is just a fun excuse to have a fantasy in the same world as ours. And no spoilers at all in this discussion at the moment. This is the trailer that's playing in the background, and if anything, I am less spoilering than the trailer. We're just talking about the exact nature. I mean, so again, 10 episodes, strong recommend. Anything else I want to cover for the YouTube crowd? Yeah, so as I say, I very much think I'm going to come up with some way to do more with a post-apocalyptic setting, like this upbeat, I suppose what we call this genre. I'd call this genre kids in the apocalypse, or kids in the post-apocalypse. As I say, it's less about it is about the kids part, because so much of it is, I think, come out of the place of so much negativity in the media about, the world ending and everything. And if you are a kid, it's like, well, I feel a bit helpless. And so to have this kind of stories and stories like Daybreak come out, where it's like, it'll be okay kind of thing. It kind of feels to me like how we had so much sort of nuclear punk stuff come out around the fear of WMD times. It's some levity around radioactivity comes through. But yeah, no, it's just a really strong world. The mutation element of it is just so compelling. So compelling. Because it lets them go around things like, well, as I say, like the characters you see there, like disco bees and mod frogs and astronomy wolves and the giant multi-armed monkey you've seen in the trailer there. It just allows them to throw all that on the palette, not have to explain it, and just go with it and have fun, and they can make puns and stuff. It's like a lot of people don't realize the reason why X-Men worked so well as a comic was Stan Lee turns around and goes, I keep on having to write origin stories every time you want to introduce a villain of the week or whatever, and it's like, this is so much work. Whereas once you've got mutation as a concept in your storyverse, you can basically go, and here's another mutant. And they may have origin, they may have backstory, but you don't have to explain whatever convoluted way they got their powers. You can just go, okay, mute means mutant. It's just spelled funny. So mute is spelled M-U-T-E in this show, but it does mean mutant, or mutated is another way of going through it. That threw me as well. It was the reason why it's so confusing, or muties, yeah. The reason that's so confusing to me was in the first episode, there is a scene with a character where she has captured a character and she's going to kill and eat it. And it's like, she basically says, you have to say something and you're not dinner. I'm not going to eat something that talks. And the dialogue there is a bit confusing. But having completed the series and having read some interviews, mute does appear to apply to mutated. And it's a general derogatory term for, where it's used by humans, it can be a derogatory term for these mixed, crazy characters. So we are going to just tie up the YouTube portion of this. And before we tie up the YouTube portion of this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up the sound a bit on this for a sec, and just so you guys can hear some of it while we talk. So for those of you on YouTube, this is obviously available on YouTube, but we are talking live on Twitch. Come join us. It's 8:30 every morning. We talk about books and shows and technology and all kinds of random stuff in our little morning sort of 15 to 30 minute shows. And then afterwards we sort of just hang out and we chat about what we spoke about more one-on-one, because it's how it is. So for those of you on YouTube, until you join us next time, ta-ta.